Imagine standing outside a locked door. You've spent years hoping someone would finally open it. You tell yourself, one day, someone will choose me. Then, one day, they do. They don't play games. They don't disappear for days. They don't leave you wondering where you stand. They remember the little things. They listen when you speak. They make you feel seen. Not because you earned it, but because they genuinely care. It's everything you've ever wanted. So why does a part of you suddenly want to leave? Why do their messages feel overwhelming instead of comforting? Why do you start searching for flaws that weren't there yesterday? Why does peace feel so uncomfortable? If you've ever pushed away someone who treated you well, this video isn't about why you're broken. It's about why your brain may be trying to protect you from the very thing you've been searching for. Because sometimes the hardest love to accept isn't toxic love, it's safe love. Here's something most people never realize. Your brain isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive. And to your brain, familiar has always meant safe, even when it isn't. Imagine you've worn a pair of shoes that were 2 sizes too small your entire life. Every step hurts. At first, the pain is unbearable, but eventually, you stop noticing it. It becomes normal. One day, someone hands you a pair that fits perfectly. They're soft, comfortable, exactly what your feet have always needed. But instead of relief, they feel strange, almost wrong. You even think about putting your old shoes back on, not because they were better, but because they were familiar. Your mind treats relationships the same way. If your earliest experiences taught you that love came with uncertainty, if affection disappeared without warning, if approval had to be earned, if being vulnerable often led to disappointment, your nervous system quietly wrote a rule. Love is supposed to feel unpredictable, not because that's true, but because that's what it learned. And over time, that lesson became your definition of love, which means when someone finally offers consistency, kindness, patience, your brain doesn't always recognize it as safety. Sometimes, it recognizes it as something completely unfamiliar. And to a brain that's trying to protect you, unfamiliar can feel just as dangerous as real danger. That's why someone can do everything right and still hear a quiet voice inside saying, something feels off. Not because the relationship is wrong, but because your nervous system has never learned what peace actually feels like and what happens next. Explains why so many people unknowingly walk away from the love they've always wanted. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most people think they're afraid of being hurt. They're not. They're afraid of what happens before the hurt. They're afraid of lowering their guard. Think about a castle that has been attacked for years. Every time the gates opened, someone came in and caused damage. Eventually, the castle stopped opening its gates altogether. From the outside, it looked cold, unwelcoming, even lonely. But the castle wasn't trying to keep people out. It was trying to stay alive. Your heart works the same way. The walls you built weren't signs of weakness. They were survival strategies. They protected you when you needed them most. The problem is, your brain doesn't know when the danger is past. So, it keeps using the same strategy, even when the person standing in front of you has no intention of hurting you. That's why something strange begins to happen. You stop replying as quickly. You suddenly notice flaws that never bothered you before. You convince yourself they're too nice. Or maybe you tell yourself, I just don't feel the spark anymore. But what if you never lost the spark? What if your nervous system simply mistook calmness for boredom? Psychologists sometimes describe this as protective distancing. Not because you're rejecting love, but because your brain is rejecting vulnerability. Because accepting real love asks you to do something incredibly difficult. It asks you to be seen, completely, without the mask, without pretending you're always okay, without trying to be perfect. And for someone who's been judged, abandoned, or emotionally disappointed before, being seen can feel more dangerous than being alone. Your mind starts whispering questions that sound reasonable. What if this is too good to be true? What if they leave once they know the real me? What if I become dependent on them? What if I'm the one who gets hurt again? Notice something. None of those thoughts are happening in the present. They're all happening in an imaginary future. That's because fear rarely speaks about what's happening. It speaks about what might happen. And the more important someone becomes to you, the louder that voice gets. Here's a sentence I want you to remember. Your brain doesn't fear love. It fears losing the person who gives it. That's a completely different thing. So instead of protecting the relationship, your mind tries to protect you by convincing you to leave first. Because according to your survival instincts, you can't be abandoned if you never fully attach in the first place. And that's the cruelest trick your brain can play. It confuses emotional distance with emotional safety. But that's only the surface, because there's something even deeper happening inside your brain. Something that explains why peaceful relationships can actually feel emotionally empty. And once you understand this, you'll never look at chemistry the same way again. Here's one of the biggest lies we've been taught about love. We've been told that when you meet the right person, you'll just know. There will be butterflies, excitement, an instant spark. But what if that feeling isn't always love? What if it's something else? Imagine living next to a busy train track for 20 years. Every morning, the trains shake your windows. Every night, the noise fills your home. At first, it's unbearable, but eventually, your brain adapts. The sound becomes your normal. Now, imagine moving to a cabin deep in the mountains. No trains, no traffic, just silence. You finally have the peace you've always wanted. But something strange happens. You can't sleep. The silence feels uncomfortable, not because silence is dangerous, but because your brain doesn't recognize it as normal. Healthy love can feel exactly like that silence. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't make you wonder where you stand. It doesn't disappear for 3 days and suddenly return with affection. It simply shows up again and again and again. But if your nervous system grew up expecting emotional highs followed by emotional lows, consistency doesn't always feel exciting. It feels quiet. And many people mistake that quietness for a lack of chemistry. Here's something fascinating. The butterflies people often describe at the beginning of a relationship aren't always a sign that they've found the one. Sometimes they're simply the body's stress response, a racing heart, shallow breathing, constant anticipation, the same physical sensations your body experiences during anxiety. That doesn't mean every exciting relationship is unhealthy, but it does mean intensity and compatibility are not the same thing. Read that again in your mind. Intensity and compatibility are not the same thing. One keeps your nervous system activated. The other allows it to finally rest. And maybe that's why so many people leave relationships that could have made them happy, not because they lacked love, but because they mistook peace for the absence of passion. Here's a thought that might change how you see your past. Maybe you didn't lose feelings. Maybe your nervous system simply stopped receiving the emotional chaos it had learned to mistake for love. And without realizing it, you started searching for problems, just to recreate a feeling that had always been familiar. But if that's true, does it mean you're destined to repeat the same pattern forever? Thankfully, no. Because your brain learned these patterns, and anything the brain can learn, it can also relearn. The question is, how? That's where everything begins to change. If your brain learned to fear safe love, does that mean you'll always push it away? Not at all. Because here's something remarkable about the human brain. It isn't fixed. It's constantly adapting. The same brain that learned to survive can also learn to feel safe again. But before that happens, you need to understand the difference between fear and intuition. People confuse them all the time. They sound similar, but they couldn't be more different. Intuition is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't fill your head with endless what-if scenarios. It simply whispers, something isn't right. Fear is different. Fear creates stories. What if they leave? What if they stop loving me? What if I'm not enough? That's why healing isn't always exciting. Sometimes, healing feels boring, quiet, ordinary. And that's exactly why so many people mistake it for the absence of love. But maybe real love was never supposed to keep you on edge. Maybe it was supposed to let you breathe. Here's something I want you to remember. The healthiest relationship you'll ever have may not be the one that gives you butterflies. It may be the one that finally lets your nervous system rest. That doesn't mean every calm relationship is the right one. And it doesn't mean you should ignore real red flags. Healthy love still requires trust, communication, respect, and mutual effort. The difference is this. Real warning signs make you feel unsafe because of what's actually happening. Old emotional wounds make you feel unsafe because of what happened long ago. Learning to tell those apart is one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop, because once you stop reacting to yesterday, You finally get the chance to experience today for what it really is. And when that happens, something beautiful begins to change. Not the people you attract, but the version of you that finally feels ready to receive them. And maybe that's what healing has been about all along. Not becoming someone new, but becoming someone who no longer mistakes peace for danger. In the final moments, there's one truth that ties everything together, and it might completely change the way you think about love forever. Maybe the biggest lie you've ever believed is that love is supposed to feel like a storm, that if your heart isn't racing, if you're not constantly wondering where you stand, if every conversation doesn't leave you emotionally exhausted, then it can't be real. But maybe you've been measuring love with the wrong ruler. Think about a lighthouse. It doesn't chase ships. It doesn't beg them to stay. It doesn't create chaos just to be noticed. It simply stands there, steady, night after night, storm after storm. Its greatest strength isn't how brightly it shines. It's how consistently it shines. Real love is much closer to a lighthouse than it is to fireworks. Fireworks are beautiful. They explode with excitement. They capture everyone's attention. But they disappear in seconds. A lighthouse quietly guides people home. Maybe that's why healthy love feels so different. It isn't trying to impress you. It isn't trying to make you addicted to uncertainty. It isn't asking you to earn it every single day. It simply shows up again and again and again. And perhaps that's why it feels unfamiliar, because your nervous system spent years preparing for storms, not realizing it was always searching for a safe harbor. Here's something I hope you remember long after this video ends. The goal of healing isn't to stop feeling fear. It's to stop letting fear decide who gets access to your heart. You may not change overnight. The walls you've built didn't appear in a day, and they won't disappear in one either. That's okay. Healing isn't about forcing yourself to trust everyone. It's about giving the right people a chance to earn that trust. Slowly, patiently, one honest conversation, one consistent action, one safe moment at a time, and one day, without even realizing it, you'll notice something has changed. The kindness that once made you suspicious will start to feel comforting. The silence that once felt empty will begin to feel peaceful. The consistency that once seemed boring will become the very thing you never want to lose. Because healing doesn't happen the day you meet the right person. It happens the day your nervous system finally realizes that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. So, if you've ever pushed away someone who genuinely cared about you, don't let this video become another piece of information you forget tomorrow. The next time someone treats you with patience, the next time someone makes you feel emotionally safe, pause for just a moment and ask yourself one simple question. Am I reacting to this person, or am I reacting to my past? That single question might change every relationship you have from this day forward. If this video made you see yourself in a different way, let me know in the comments. Have you ever mistaken peace for boredom, or anxiety for love? Your answer might help someone else realize they're not alone. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology behind human behavior, relationships, and the mind, subscribe to MindraftX, because sometimes the most important person you'll ever understand is yourself.